Welcome to lesson 7127, trigonometric functions of real numbers. So let's talk about all trig functions. Okay, so here's our definition. So the sine of some angle equals RY. So let us first draw an angle. So if we have an angle, and our original side, our beginning side, is always the x-axis, and our terminal side, the end of the ray, is in some point in space. Let's say x, y. And then we draw a vertical line down. Okay, so we call this angle theta. Well, they call it t. Let's call it t here. Let's call it t, angle t. The sine of t is the y value. So the sine of t is the y value, and the cosine of t is the x value, and the tangent is the y over the x, where r is the hypotenuse. We could call it h, or we call it r, the radius in a circle, anything you want to call it. The cosecant flips the sine upside down. The secant flips the cosine upside down, and the cotangent flips the tangent upside down. So basically, that's what we're going to be working with. So we're going to find the trig ratios, like we did in the previous video, and flip the values upside down. Okay, and what you have to memorize is where are the x and y, 1 and 0s, and that will help us figure out. Because remember, from previous videos, the x and the y are both positive in quadrant 1. The x is negative, but the y is positive. So everything above the x-axis has a positive y. Okay, so they're both negative in the x and the y are both negative in quadrant 3. And in quadrant 4, the x is positive, the y is negative. So as we can see, in quadrants 3 and 4, the y values are negative. The x values are negative left of the y-axis and positive to the right of the y-axis. That's not positive y, that should be positive x. Okay, and then at our 0 pi, or 0 degrees, at pi over 2, 90 degrees, at pi 180 degrees, at 3 pi over 2, 270 degrees, we have either the x or the y will be 1, -1, or 0. So pay attention. Remember, in a point, the x is always first, the y is always second. Pay attention to these things. Keep this in the back of your mind so when you see trig values, you know which quadrant you're working in, and that will help you with the angle that you're dealing with. And that concludes this lesson, and go work on some practice problems.